Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatting with Asta. This series seeks to look at all the different people in my life, and some people I know and some people I don't know that well yet. I look at them as both inspirational and informational resources. And if you're enjoying this series, don't forget to thumbs up, like, comment, and subscribe if you can. Also, I'd appreciate it if you share the video. And, feel free to browse through the whole playlist if this is your first video. Today on my show, I have GRAHAM REZNICK. He is a writer, director, album, DJ, music aficionado, and I'm so excited to have him on today. Welcome to the show, Graham.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and you've got your sleek sound system ready to go.
Yep, this is my cave where I've been for 3 months.
Yeah,
Spend all my time here. It's all set up, ready to go.
you getting rations every now and then, some gallons of water maybe.
Every once in a while, but for the most part, no. Just stuck in here, finding crumbs before the ants do.
Well, at least you seem chipper, so that's good.
Yeah.
Um, so I was introduced to your work just because of your association with Glass Eye Pix, and kind of like in a reverse order. Um, One of your works that I really gravitated towards was Deadwax. And if anybody's watching and they're interested in seeing it, it's on Shudder. It's a very cool series. Each episode is like about in that 10-minute living space.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a really fun project. How did that come to be?
Well, thank you. Deadwax was something that was floating around in my head as a kernel of an idea, but not a fully fleshed out story. But I'm big into music and collect records and make music and stuff. So um, I had a through Sam Zimmerman, who is at Shudder and is one of the curators of Shudder. I was asked to come in and pitch some material for a short form series. And when I went in, I met one of the executives there, Owen Shiflett, and it was one of those meetings that I didn't really know what to pitch exactly. I had a couple ideas, but I wasn't expecting much of it, so I just kind of went in and was very loose and hit it off with him, and we chatted, and we turns out we had a lot of similar interests in music and similar movies that we liked, and I realized, oh my gosh, this guy would probably like this idea I have, and so I just kind of spun the idea out in the room, um, as sort of a Ninth Gate meets cigarette burns by way of High Fidelity
Yeah.
and In the Mouth of Madness, and it from that point on, it felt like we were just going to make it, and that's kind of what happened. It took a while; it took about a year and a half. I pitched it a week before the 2016 election, so I spent a good 2 months depressed and trying to get back to the keyboard and actually write a real pitch, but it eventually came out, and then we shot it in 2018. So it took a while.
That it's a very fun examination of just like vinyl culture, but also like the lore that you spin out of it. Do you want to tell the audience like a little bit about what dead wax means?
Sure. Yeah, the title comes from the center of a record. So when you look at the side of a record, you have the grooves and you've got a label in the middle. But between where the grooves end and the label begins, there's a section of the vinyl that is not really usable because the needle can't really read music in that section very well. Um, have weird deja vu. I'm literally almost quoting lines from the character in the show that it explains this, and
It's all interrelated.
it's just weird. It's just weird to me. It's weird to me to quote stuff from my own thing, even unintentionally. It's just weird, but it's what I would say. Um, so there's this space in the middle of the vinyl. It's called the dead wax, or the run out groove, and uh, on its own, it's not very important. But over the years, people, mastering engineers, would write. Well, you would see serial numbers, but you would also see like pressing plant information, so you could kind of track down where a record came from, where it was pressed, who mastered it. But then you would also see like little secret messages, and
Yeah.
so it kind of has its own like not following, but just people who collect records, are always checking the dead wax and checking to see if there's anything there, to see, who mastered it, if they're looking for a certain pressing or where it came from, or things like that. So it's very obsessive, and so record collecting, which is already very obsessive, can kind of drill down to this like hyper obsessive thing, and it's a cool name, so it worked for a horror show about vinyl.
Yeah, it is really fascinating, and I have only a few records. My prized record is a Lily Tomlin a comedy album.
Oh, nice.
That gives you a little sense of like my taste. I'm a big Nina Simone fan. I've been
Hmm.
making sure to get Clay all the classics every anniversary. So he just introduced him like the Velvet Underground, like just that kind of thing. And
Oh yeah.
what have you been listening to lately? Like, what kind of records are you spinning?
Well, I'm quarantining with a 3-year-old going on 4-year-old. So my vinyl time is very small these days. My writing process used to be, and hopefully will be again. Wow, I'm just like spinning out on this is quarantine Swiss cheese brain
Yeah,
in full action.
to keep people
To
talking.
yeah, to answer your question, I'm going to go big and then come back. I generally have a very hard time writing, even though it's one of my primary jobs. I'll sit down and it's just very hard to stare at a blank page, even if I have a concrete idea of what I want to do. It's an attention thing.
Yeah,
But a long time ago, I started getting in a routine that has really helped me, which is that I make a pact with myself that if I put on a record, a side of a record is 15 to 20 minutes. I have to stay in front of the keyboard and I can't look away for the side of the record. So I listen to the music, it gets me into the headspace, and I start writing. And then if I'm drifting, I get up, I flip the record, I put on a new record, whatever. But it's like a routine and a ritual that helps me really like kind of find that place I need to get to. Um, and I know if I'm having a really good writing day if the needle gets to the end of the record and is just spinning there silently for like an hour, and then an hour will go by and I'll go, oh my gosh, I didn't even get up and change the record. So like usually listening to records is a daily habit for me that I do all day long while I'm writing. Lately, I uh, basically have listened to like 2 records a week. I listened to 2 records earlier today. Like that I can.
oh
I
yeah,
listen to partially because my daughter just wants me to put on like kids music and stuff.
yeah.
And there are certain things she really likes, but I can. I got her into George Harrison's Cloud Nine. She really loves "I Got My Mind Set on You," the
Yes.
cover that he did. She asks for it constantly, 100 times a day. I'm still not tired of it though, so that's good. Um, but today we listened to an album called Bellberry Circle Computer Journeys, which is or Outward Journeys. I forget the title of it now offhand. It's great. It's on Ghostbox. Kind of synth, the spacey music, and Cowboy Junkies Trinity Sessions, which is famous for the cover of Sweet Jane that they do in Natural Born Killers, which is just one of the most beautiful covers. Speaking of Velvet Underground, it's just an incredible piece of music.
That's funny when you talk about your kid listening to music. When I was little, just flashed in my memory. My parents are sending me a lot of movies right now because they're kind of putting together the different sections of our lives. Because I traveled a lot growing up, so I lived in Holland and Spain and parts of Texas. And
Oh
anyway,
wow!
yeah, there was this thing that when I was little, I couldn't walk necessarily right away, but anytime the mamas and the papas came on,
Hmm.
I would like grab with all my might onto something and just start like dancing
Wow!
to the point of embarrassment. Like if they were in Best Buy or Circuit City, like I would grab on and I would just be like, but
Nice.
it was like anything.
Mamas and the Papas.
It was like, and then when I was in the womb, my and my dad used to like play with the headphones on, like everything from Vivaldi to Aerosmith. I mean, just like everything. So like, and I talked about this with Steve, but like I just can't. It's hard for me to function without sound. Like it's just
Yeah.
like I need. It's like a tick. Like if I don't have like some sort of ambiance behind me at all times, like I'm kind of I start to like you know freak
Yeah.
out a little bit.
I go through phases of that depending on what I'm doing during the day. If I'm working in audio, like if I'm
Yeah,
doing sound design for something, um, I need a break from it because it's like fatigue. But my break from it is still another kind of audio. I typically then veer towards like heavy podcast listening, just like constantly have my phone on in my pocket, just playing podcasts,
Yeah.
and just always having a voice there. I also like working from home. I've been self quarantining for several years now, as a person who works from home primarily. So it's like the only companionship I get, or like the constant hearing human voices all day
Yeah.
long, just like while I get up and like go to the kitchen and make a sandwich or whatever, just having a podcast going. Um, so it's like another kind of audio, just kind of filling in the silence.
Yeah, I really I I crave it. It's bizarre. Maybe that's why I'm doing this show. I just I need the variety, and I need certain sounds all the time, and it's like it's a weird tick. And I know that my mom has been dealing with some vertigo issues
Hmm.
like in this point in her life, and that's obviously always related to the ears. So my
Yeah,
fear now is that I'm just going to be like having vertigo at some point because I'm just constantly, but you
don't
do
have
a
enough
lot of
audio.
you do a lot of sound design, you said, and
Hmm.
you worked on the Until Dawn series, the video game. Do you want to talk about that
Yes.
experience? Video games?
Yeah. So that came about through Fessenden, Larry Fessenden, who asked me to help him write a like spec section of the script. This is like 2011 now. It was a long time ago. We had worked together at Glass Eye Pix through Ty West, who I grew up with, and so Ty and I went to school in New York together. I was at NYU, he was at SVA, and while Ty was at SVA, he met Larry, who had come in via Kelly Reichardt to kind of like guest in the class. And so Ty interned for Larry, and we both just started working with Larry. And Larry financed Ty's first film in 2004, I want to say, which was The Roost. Came out in 2005. And then I did my first film, I Can See You, with Larry in 2006, 7. Came out in 2009. Um, and then we just got to know each other really well, and had worked on a couple scripts together. So he asked me to write this spec script with him for Supermassive Games, for Until Dawn, what became Until Dawn. Partially because Larry just didn't know video games. He kind of missed that movement, because he's a little bit older, and he was in New York and making movies at the time that video games became prevalent. But he's always been really interested in all forms of kind of like new media,
Yeah.
and using technology to push the envelope with storytelling, and so he was fascinated by it. And we worked on two versions of Until Dawn. We worked on PS3 version that got shelved in favor of kind of porting it to a PS4 version mid-process. So we had written the whole script for that and shot most of it, and then we rewrote it for PS4. So we worked on it for a long time. My favorite fact about myself, and the thing that if I have a resume, it will just have one thing on it, and it will just be that we got a Guinness World Record for the longest screenplay for an adventure game, because that's a world
That's
record to have.
wow.
Um, because basically we made up a very high number of script pages because there was no way to actually tell. So we have a
Wow.
Guinness World Record. So that's um, yeah. Until Dawn. It's basically a slasher, teen slasher horror movie that's a game. So you get to be the characters in the world of a slasher film and make the mistakes they make, and push the stereotypes, either lean into them or lean out of them, depending on how you want to play it, which I think, at least to me, is what made the game feel so fresh when it came out in 2015.
Yeah. And going back with your relationship with Larry, and you worked on your film I Can See You.
Hmm.
I I recently saw it, and I was thinking about something you said a little while back, that you were inspired by Hausu.
Oh yeah.
And that is one of my. I used to work at this bar, rest in peace, Videology Bar and Cinema, and they used to show
Hmm.
all sorts of things. And my favorite shifts to work were the shifts when we would screen either the Lizzie McGuire movie, because people tipped so well, Selena, but then Hausu would
Oh
like
yeah.
hi. And Hausu, people order so much to drink. It's so like such a fun audience. It's such a fun film, and it's such a crowd film. And it's
Yeah.
so beautifully absurd. How did you connect that when you were working on? Because I saw that you had mentioned it, and I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought that'd be a good way to talk about it.
I'm trying to remember what the context would have been that I would have mentioned it in, but it was something that was very prevalent in my mind when I was making I Can See You, or really when I was in post on I Can See You, I think was when I
Yeah,
first saw it. Um, I love experimental film, and I love, you know, Kenneth Anger and Stan Brakhage, and people who kind of push the limits of what you can do with moving image and sound as a medium, that aren't necessarily trying to express a story as much as they're trying to express an idea. But I also love like junk TV. I don't know a better way to say it. Actually, that's a very bad way to say it. That is, I'm taking that back. Not junk TV. I like very soapy TV.
yeah,
I watch a lot of the CW superhero shows, which are so much fun. They're just great.
yeah.
Friends of mine, we get together. Well, pre this, we'd get together every week, and we'd watch Flash and Arrow. And so I have this weird thing in my brain where I'm always trying to balance complete crowd pleasing popcorn, fun, soapy, heightened entertainment with,
Absurd.
yeah, mind boggling, absurd, sheer existential, uh, what is the word for it? Sublime,
Yeah,
um, cosmic terror. And there is a way to do that. And I think people like Lynch do that really well. People like Nicholas Roeg do that really well. And in a movie like Hausu, he does that really well. I, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but the director of uh, Pausu just passed away recently, R.I.P. But he, in that movie, what he did was he keeps you entertained and like engaged on a visceral, emotional, and um, unconscious level every second. Like
yeah,
every second of the movie, you're like, "Oh my god, what's going to happen now? This is happening. Oh my god, what's going to happen now? This is happening." But it never feels like you're being manipulated in a way that feels like you're being betrayed, like because people can do that and just keep things completely absurd. But I think with someone like or in a movie like Hausu or something like a Lynch film, there's also like a subconscious through line where you're constantly going, oh my god, this is happening now, but in the back of your brain you're going, of course this is happening now, this makes sense somehow, and I don't know why, but it does, which is the way dreams work.
yeah,
Dreams constantly make you go, whoa, this, oh, and I'm here, oh, okay, but it all somehow makes sense in the back of your brain. So to me, that's what I wanted to accomplish in a movie like I Can See You, was something that was a a ride from beginning to end, and you never went too long without feeling like you were being destabilized in a incredibly engaging and entertaining way, as much as that's possible. And I think that that's kind of what I want to do in movies in general, on a varying degree of spectrum of experimental to um, more commercial. I
yeah,
can see it being on the more experimental end of that. Deadwax being on the more commercial end of that.
yeah. And what a kick I got out of seeing Larry in that wig and a suit and a suit.
Yep.
Oh my
Yep.
god!
With the cap in his teeth. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have never seen him in a suit. I just realized that when I watched it. I was like, I've never seen him look dapper ever. Like his own version of dapper for sure, but it was like that was the most absurd of the
It
film.
was a $5 wig and a $6 suit from Goodwill, and barely fit him, but he did a great job carrying it.
Great job. And
Yeah, that was he always gets cast as like the bum or the scary guy because he can lean into that, But Larry, Larry grew up. He went to Andover, and he grew up in a certain type of milieu that
yeah,
is not how we associate what we associate with Larry, but he knows how to turn that on if he
yeah,
needs to, and it's one of his superpowers, I think.
yeah. He's he's a wonderful person that understands also like just bringing people together, seeing where to push different potential, and definitely guide people and mentor them along the way. And
Yes.
I was also wondering, this is going to seem like, I just thought I'd throw this absurd question out there because I don't have a gaming system, but lively on the family chat. Um,
Hmm.
I don't have a gaming system, but you are part of this phenomenon that I have not asked any of my guests about. Can you talk to me about Animal Crossing for just a second? Because I don't understand it, but people seem to be recreating film scenes and
it's it, it's it really is fascinating to me in that there's so little there, but it's captivated so many people.
yeah,
And I think that Animal Crossing's always been a popular franchise by Nintendo, but in a very kind of niche way.
yeah,
But I think because it came out literally like a week into a worldwide lockdown and quarantine, it just kind of transplanted everyone's lives, just transplanted into it. And I can tell you why I've gotten really into it. And you might be referring to the weird thing that I did a few weeks ago, which was recreate a scene from every episode of Deadwax in Animal Crossing, which you can see on my Twitter if anyone's interested. Um, it get that was like something for me to do. It was like a little project to have. But I there's like very little you can do every day in it. You can go around and you can pick shells up off the beach. You can go to the store and buy like one of three new items. You can buy turnips once a week and then sell them on the stock market, which is very silly, but like it's just like a thing. And then you check the prices every day. So I have this like checklist of things to do with my 3-year-old.
yeah,
So we go and we do them all, and it's like a structure to our currently structureless
yeah,
lives. I mean, I've heard you talk on another interview about having structure, and weirdly, Animal Crossing has been
yeah.
the closest thing we've had to a structure in our weird lockdown life. So I think that that's part of it.
It's fascinating. Another person I know, I don't know if you know him, Ben David Grabinski.
Yep.
He's been like posting all these like movie related Animal Crossing screenshots, and it's just fascinating to me because I can't remember the last time. I mean, actually, I can. When I used to be really into Pokemon, like
Hmm.
Pokemon like Stadium came out, and like people could share their trade and stuff, and I had to go down the street to this kid whose dad did work in Japan, and I would literally spend $10 cash to get one card from him that was like
Yep.
holographic and stuff. That's like the closest I can get to understanding this. But I don't have a gaming system. But I feel like it's getting to the point where I need to update my Blu-ray player, so I might as well look into like a PlayStation and
Yeah. I mean,
difference.
uh, I really have been enjoying the Nintendo Switch right now, just because it's one because I have a young kid, but I, I I've always had an interesting. I don't know. Y- I'm almost 40, and I grew up with computers, and I grew up with games as the games came out. Like I feel like people right around 40 right now. Atari was coming out when we were very little. NES was coming out when we were 8, 9, 10. Then Super Nintendo. Then like we matured with the systems, so it's ingrained in us and everybody younger than us, and not so much for people older than us. So we were always told it's a waste of our time
Yeah,
and we shouldn't be doing that. And there was a certain point where when I went to college, actually even in high school, because I was really big into computer games more than even console games, really big into adventure games on the computer, which are a little more narrative
yeah,
and less arcadey. And then I would play Doom and things like that, and build like Doom levels and build stuff in Doom. But when I wanted to go to film school and I went to film school, I put games aside for years, for almost 10 years, because I felt like, oh, this is distracting me from the work I really want to do. And then when I started working in games, it was like suddenly permission, and I realized so much of what I want out of movies comes from being having our brains change by having games be a part of our lives. We have a different people who grew up playing games have a different relationship to the media
yeah,
that they're engaging with than people who didn't. I genuinely believe this. There's a sense of interaction, even if it's not true interaction. There's a sense of like agency and ownership on the part of the viewer, the player, or expectation of that.
yeah.
Um, that I think needs to be respected, and I think like respected on the part of the creators. And I think games are really valuable. I think it's especially right now that everyone's home. I think just watching movies is great, but also if you can play games too, I think games are, I think it's not a bad thing to engage with storytelling in that way, or even just engage with something that's. completely arcade-like, but exercises your brain in a particular way. As long as you're balancing it with other things, you can't only do that. But
Well, it's engagement, right? So like I feel like a lot of people's brains have been turning into mush, disassociating because of things like social media, which force
right,
them to just absorb, feel, self-hate. And sometimes the self-hate or fear of something can guide consumerism. And so consumerism becomes like this hefty beast, you know? And instead, I think when you engage in film, when you engage in sharing film recommendations or engaging in games or having conversation, it actually like wakes up your brain and it forces you to like re-engage and like kind of unplug from that kind of, this is my rant on consumerism, but it's unplug from the man. And I feel like it's like, you know, and you were talking about David Lynch. I got for I got this compilation of the original series and the return, and
yeah,
we started. I had already seen the original series, but Clay, we like did like the binge, and then he
hmm
made cherry pie, and we started watching the return, and we're like halfway through the return. But watching the show, you're right to say that your subconscious kind of unlocks little things that your mind, when you write it down, you're like, this scene makes no sense, but it does. And it's an example of how surreal and absurd art and engagement in games can kind of wake your brain up from.
absolutely. I actually really think that when I remember watching Twin Peaks: The Return as it was coming out and feeling like it was the closest thing to a game narrative in a linear narrative than I had seen in a while. It engaged my brain on a way that felt like I was interacting with it, which was just like so rewarding to me. It's not for everybody, but it was, you know, perfect for me. And that was, yeah, waiting for that to come out every week was very, very nice. I miss that.
It's so it's yeah, it's such a present to see something that's like unadulterated, like made in the vein of the creator. And
Yeah,
I love David Lynch so much. And I like to imagine that subconsciously he's watching my show
it
and
might
then,
be.
you know, he might be. Actually, this show is sponsored by David Lynch. After he checks the weather every day, he watches my
He's
show.
on YouTube.
He's
Yeah,
on YouTube, so I mean, come on, that's where it's
you never
at.
know.
I wanted to ask you the question I ask all my guests,
hmm
which is, what kind of message would you like to send out to the universe, to the audio waves?
I've been thinking about this since you emailed me, and I was hoping to have a good answer by now, but my only answer is kind of a non-answer, which is just that I don't feel like I or we owe the universe anything. I feel like the universe owes us something. So, if anything, um, I think the universe should realize that we can take care of ourselves. And if I've seen anything this past week or two, it's that people are people are giving me hope right now for a lot of things, and seeing people come out in the way they've been coming out in support of Black Lives Matter and um, against police brutality and the system that desperately needs changing.
Yeah,
That's us. We're doing that. It's not a higher power. It's not the universe. Um, it's nice that the universe is there, but I think it's people that I'm really proud of right now. So
yeah.
that's all I've got to say, I guess.
That's a good way to look at it. I always just think that there are times like these that feel really pivotal, where there's an energy in the air and people are finally, because you can say it's the pandemic, you can say whatever, but I think that I'm a huge believer in astrology, and there are
hmm
certain alignments going on right now that haven't happened since the American Revolution, Rome
Wow.
falling, the civil rights movement. There are certain things going on that force us to reflect inwards. So, like, this is not a time to want anything, right? It's a time to like see that what you have is there all along. And so
Yeah.
people are realizing that, and it gives me hope because I've just been, and I'm in that millennial generation. We've been getting a lot of shit but we've been through a lot, and a lot of it has been where we have forced ourselves to separate from society. We've forced ourselves to escape the reality because things are so horrible. So I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think that people are hope right now, and that the universe, we can do it. We got it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
We got this, hopefully.
Yeah. But thank you so much for coming on the show, and give your little one good energy on my behalf, and continue being the world's DJ as I see it.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat with you and get to know you in this way.
Of course. We can take care of ourselves.